admin building by the Laramie River. Soon, mothers with prams would stroll the wooden boardwalks, chatting with one another. That domestic sight sometimes set him into melancholy, as he remembered the desperate days in 1876 and 77, when troops came and went and war waged all around. Fort Laramie looked as gentrified as a Midwestern town now. Great Gadfreys and all the saints! If Colm was lucky, he might catch a glimpse of Ozzie Washington, easily the prettiest woman on the post, or so he reckoned. Depending on who might be ill among the officers' wives, the lieutenant colonel's wife was kindly inclined to send Ozzie, her servant, with a tureen of nourishing broth or a loaf or two of bread to the house of affliction. Ozzie was not a time-waster. Bowl or basket-laden, she moved at a clip that set her hips swaying so nicely. She was grace personified, moving rapidly, but with the dignity of her race. Once, perhaps on a dare from one of the lieutenant colonel's children, Ozzie had set a bushel basket square on her head and worn it the length of Officers' Row without mishap. During Reconstruction days in Louisiana, he had seen women of color carry goods that way. So much grace and symmetry had impressed him then, and did so now with Ozzie. Always the observer, he had noticed how nicely the races had mingled for at least a century in New Orleans, producing graceful women of café au lait skin, called mulatto, or the regrettable high yeller. He had admired them because they were so different. Ozzie's hair was wildly curly to a fault, and her skin was more olive than coffee, but her nose was straight, and her lips at least fuller than his. To say he admired Ozzie Washington was to minimize the matter. He was no expert, but Colm thought he loved her. He had met her 7 years ago in 1875, when the 4th Infantry was first garrisoned at Fort Laramie. The medical department had assigned Colm permanent duty there, barring field emergencies, so he had ample time to watch the movements of various regiments. Ozzie stood out because the hospital had been plagued with endless winter ailments, and then Major Chambers, commanding, ordered her there to help. Help she had. Ozzie had no fear of the pukes or runs, and did exactly what the surgeons required. She never complained, and she kept her mouth closed when other women on similar assignments objected long and loud. During a welcome lull in sheet-changing and basin-dumping, Colm had mustered his courage and asked her how she remained so calm. She had given him a kind look, the sort of glance women reserved for the young and the addled, and said in her velvet voice, "Suh, if I didn't help, who would?" She was right. Colm assured her that he was no sir, just a hospital steward. She nodded with understanding, but everlastingly called him "suh." He quit arguing about it because he liked the languid way one word glided into the next when she spoke. Ozzie Washington was exotic to Colm Callahan, who himself was an orphan from New York's bleak 5-point slum, a drummer boy with the Irish Brigade, and had become an impromptu hospital steward at Gettysburg when he had no choice, much like Ozzie. Her kindness stood out more than her beauty. He remembered an endless night in 1876 when the post surgeon had stretched out onto the table in his operating bay to grab a nap. Colm had slumped to the wall in the corridor, weary nigh unto death of 36-hour days. With a tap on his shoulder, Ozzie had handed him a cup of tea and an apple already sliced, then sat beside him. When he forgot to eat, she had put a slice in his hand. So kind. Once, he had mentioned her to a friend, a corporal in the 3rd Cavalry, tentatively expressing himself. The corporal had looked at him in shock. "You know what she is," the man had said. Then said it anyway, a word Colm heard all the time, and had probably said a few times himself. Everyone did. After that day, he never said it again, because it wasn't a polite way to talk about someone as thoughtful.